So I just kind of sat back one day and I was like, this is really, really frustrating. This whole experience that I've ever had all the way through my career of trying to find sponsorships and events and campaigns and basically earnings opportunities as an athlete can be really difficult. There's got to be a better way for this to be done. In the moment, I was really disappointed to have missed out on gold by such a small margin. And I remember just being absolutely gutted in that moment and just being so frustrated and disappointed. And it's an incredible performance and something that I'll be extremely proud of for the rest of my life. My first Olympics, I won 1 Olympic gold. The second Olympics, I won a gold and a silver. Third Olympics, I don't want to do gold, silver, bronze. I would much rather go 2 golds. But, look, I think moving into that next Olympics, the success for me in LA would be.
Before we get into today's conversation, this is genuinely relevant for a lot of founders listening. Are you running a business that pays suppliers abroad, receives international payments, or operates across borders? World First helps founders manage global payments and FX more efficiently with access to competitive exchange rates and tools designed specifically for growing businesses. If your business is doing anything internationally, this is well worth a look. World First have given us an exclusive offer for podcast listeners to get 50 transactions completely fee-free for 60 days. Head to worldfirst.com/screwit to create a free account and claim now. Now let's jump into the main conversation.
So Matt, looking back, what was the first real screw it, just do it moment in your swimming career when you decided to take a massive leap and really absolutely go for it?
I think I've always been very ambitious, is probably the best way to start it off. And we've got a close family friend who I used to swim with when I was much, much younger. And she remembered and told us about this after my first Olympic Games, that leading into my first ever swimming gala when I was 8 years old, I went to the competition, got absolutely battered by all the other kids there. And then on the bus on the way back with the rest of the team, apparently I announced to everybody on the bus that I was going to be an Olympic champion one day. And then 10 years later, when I was 18 years old, I became Olympic champion. Obviously, at that time, I had no idea what that really meant to be an Olympic champion and the journey that I would have to go on to get there. But I think it's safe to say I've always been pretty ambitious. And I think, the sort of specific moment of when I really just wanted to take the leap and go for it, it'd be really hard to pin down. But I think I've always been somebody that's not afraid to throw myself at something and see how it goes. And sometimes that doesn't work. But I found most of the time, actually, it either does work or you get pretty close to it and learn loads from it. So, that probably answers the question as best as I can, really.
Yeah. And where do you think that belief came from? Like when you were, was it 8? You said that you said that. Can you kind of pinpoint that now, or is that kind of like lost in youth?
Probably the correct answer is delusion at the time. But to be honest with you, I think I'm very fortunate. I've always had a really, really supportive family, and they've always very much sort of been of the attitude that if you can dream it, you can do it, and to believe in yourself and to back yourself, and if you throw yourself at something and really give it everything you've got, that there's no reason why you can't achieve it. And I think growing up in that kind of environment and with that kind of attitude from the family that raised me, kind of shaped that attitude for me, not just in sport, but just, in life in general, really. And I think, it's something I still very much try to embody now. Obviously, as everybody does, still there's times where I'll have doubts, and question myself and question my ability. But I think grounding myself in that self-belief has taken me to places that, I could only ever have dreamed of back, many years ago.
When was the last time you doubted yourself in your swimming career, would you say?
Good question. Probably the last sort of major time was just before the 200 free final in the Paris Olympic Games in 2024. So going into that competition, I was in a really good place, really good shape. Everything was looking great. I won the World Championships on the 2-3 the year before, so I was going in as the reigning world champ. However, got to the competition and as lots of people did, wasn't feeling the best. Picked up some of the horribleness that was going around the village at the time. And going into that 2-3 final, in the semi-final, I barely made it through. So I think I was 7th into the final. And I felt horrendous in the semi-final. I remember turning at 100 meters of this 200-meter race and thinking, this is awful. I'm not going to make it back. I was behind the pack, if you like. And I remember consciously thinking to myself that I'm the world champion. I'm not even going to make the final this year. and really sort of doubting myself in that moment. Managed to get through and scrape into the final. But that evening there was a lot of self-doubt, and I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to deliver anywhere near the performance that I'd need to sort of come away with a win the next evening. And then, working through that and figuring out how to find that self-belief again in a time where it wasn't there naturally was a real challenge, but something that I've learned so much from. In the next evening, then I went on to win silver, 2/100ths of a second away from winning gold. So obviously not quite the outcome I was looking for, but still not a bad one. But yeah, like I say, it was a really important part of my career and my life. I think that 24 hours.
And can you remember then, like you said, like turning 100 meter and like a little snapshot in your mind? It's crazy, isn't it? When you're in that moment and you're obviously uber focused on what you need to do, but you still got the good devil and the bad devil chiming in for conversations, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think because obviously swimming is such a lonely sport. When you're in the water, it's just you. There's nobody to talk to. You can't hear anything. It's just splashing yourself in the pool. That's all it is. And so it is one of those places where it's quite easy to get into that kind of flow state and when you're not thinking, but there's also times where you do have to kind of fight with yourself in a race and be able to contend with your own thoughts, the good and the bad of those. And that was definitely one of those moments, yeah.
And we'll talk about your transition into the business world and the new business that you're launching and whether I'm sure there are doubts when it comes to that, because there's so many things to know, right, with starting a business. But before that, a couple more questions. Elite sport is full of structure, coaches, plans, cycles, goals, etc. Did you ever push back against that, or were you always just comfortable trusting the process?
It's a really tough question. I think both at different times. There's some times in your career, I think, where you really do believe in what you're doing. You can trust that process even when it doesn't seem to be going right in that moment, but you know that you're on the right tracks and you're on that journey to get into where you need to be, and that comes easily. And then there's other times definitely where you do have to almost take a step back and be able to reevaluate something and be able to know whether or not actually maybe this isn't working and we're going down the wrong route here and we might need to pivot a little bit, or likewise that actually being able to step back and go, yeah, this doesn't seem quite right, but let's stick at it for a little bit longer and just keep measuring where we're at and see where we're going. So yeah, I think simplest answer is there's times for both sides, but the difficulty and the challenge, and probably part of what I enjoy so much about it is figuring out which one of those times it is at any given moment.
Yeah. As you've alluded to, you've kind of experienced, the highest highs of world championships and gold medals, and also moments where the margins were clearly bloody brutal, right? How do you process that now, like looking back? Because it's not that long ago, but it is long ago, I suppose, in cycles of training, etc.
Yeah, 100%. It's a difficult one. I think in the moment I was really disappointed, which is obvious. You almost expect that in that moment to have missed out on gold by such a small margin. I remember turning around and I thought I'd won. I thought when I touched the wall, I thought I'd got the touch, and I turned around and saw the 2 next to my name. And I remember just being absolutely gutted in that moment and just being so frustrated and disappointed. And then when I realised just how close it was, even more frustration, even more disappointment. And I think the immediate reaction was very much a negative one. I don't think I showed it in the moment. I think I did a good job of putting a smile on my face and not showing that. But deep down, I was really disappointed. And I had to turn that around pretty quick because my competition wasn't over. We had the 4x200 relay the next day, which we went on to go and win. But I had to make sure that I kind of snapped out of that and got back to the mindset I needed to be in for those other races. But I think, to be honest with you, in all honesty, looking back at it now, there is still an element of frustration and disappointment, because it's so painfully close. It almost would have been better if I could have been a second away from winning, just so that it was like, hey, look, I gave my best effort, it just wasn't there. But because it was so close, there's always going to be that frustration and almost that what if I'd shaved my eyebrows beforehand, would that have made the difference? Who knows? And it's almost that one that I know isn't necessarily fair to look at it that way to myself, but that's almost the way that your brain works. And I think stepping back and looking at it objectively, it's an incredible performance and something that I'll be extremely proud of for the rest of my life. But To be completely honest, I think the thing that I'm most proud of that was the way I was able to turn it around from 24 hours before, and then still put out the performance that I did to get to the result that I got in the end.
Yeah, and perspective gives you that, and time gives you that, right? Or otherwise, how are you ever going to get out of that? And I always, think of a sport like golf, where you have like one bad shot, but then you've got another 17 holes to walk to, and if you can't actually consign that to the dustbin of history, then your entire next 3, 4, 5 hours is absolutely ruined, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I've attempted golf every now and again, and I feel that pain as well. I've had that plenty of times. Probably far more bad shots than good ones, to be honest.
It's the hardest sport in the world, I'm telling you. Oh, sorry, the most frustrating. I won't say the hardest, the most frustrating sport in the world.
Yeah. Because obviously swimming's the hardest, obviously. So,
exactly.
I'm just playing, but...
And what do you put that down to, being able to change your mindset to kind of switch out back then from the result that you got individually to then the relay? Was that the team around you? Was it the team that you were going to be swimming with? Was it, girlfriends, parents? What was it?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of all of the above. To be fair, I'm very lucky. I've got some incredible people in my corner. In every aspect. Family, close friends, teammates, coaches, support staff. The lot. I'm really lucky in that aspect, and I think it was very much a team effort to turn that round. Both, the night before the final of the 2-3, and also then the evening of the 2-3, then turning around that disappointment to be able to get back out and race again the next day. So I think it was a real mixture. Probably in that moment had to lean a little bit heavier on, my coaches and the team of sort of practitioners that I have around me. Also because I don't want to lean on my teammates at that point, because they've got their own battles that they're fighting and their own demons that I don't want to sort of put mine onto them in that moment. But unfortunately for the staff we have around us, that is their job for us to throw that at them and make their lives difficult. So my psychologist, Dr. Tom Bates, he was incredible. My coach Ryan, he was phenomenal as well, and of course, my family and things as well. Being able to lean on them in that moment and almost be able to step away from the outcomes a little bit and just know that regardless of the outcome, they're always going to be proud of me and they're always going to be pleased with whatever outcome I've got, provided that I've enjoyed it and I'm happy.
Exactly, and as a father, I can definitely say that it's like that thing now that I probably wouldn't have known years ago. It's like you just want them to be happy. You really, literally do. If you're enjoying it and you're happy, then it's an absolute godsend. Has there been any moments, off the back of anything, any competitions, or just the kind of rigmarole of training where you've fallen out of love with your sport?
I wouldn't say so. There's definitely been times in the sport where it is tough and you're maybe not enjoying things as much as you have done previously. This time of year is classic for it. This year I'm actually really enjoying myself, but this time of year can be tough, because it's dark, it's cold, it's raining. You're not on a nice warm weather camp anywhere. It's a while until you've got any of the big competitions of the summer. So it can be tough this time of year, to be completely honest. But again, I think just grounding myself in why I do it and why I continue to compete. And that being because I love the sport, I love competing, I love what I get to do, and I couldn't picture myself not doing it. And I think the day that I'm no longer enjoying the sport, or I would rather be doing something else, will be the day that I hang up the goggles, so to speak. But for the moment, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Nice segue, because you're setting yourself up for future success by starting a business. I mean, I didn't set you up with that one at all, but it's a nice segue. Let's talk about Sponsor. Where did the idea come from? And, screw it, just do it moment. When did you decide to stop talking about it like internally and with friends and family, etc., and actually take action on the idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was probably around early 2025, so probably Q1 2025 at some point. I don't know the exact date, but it was around then, and I was going through a process with a brand for me, and a sponsorship deal that I was in the process of working through, and it was one of those where I just kind of sat back one day and I was like, this is really, really frustrating. And I was like, well, actually, this isn't just really frustrating. This whole experience that I've ever had, all the way through my career of trying to find sponsorships and events and campaigns and basically earnings opportunities as an athlete, can be really difficult. It's really hard to find them. Then there's not many out there. When you do find them, it's then quite often a really long, drawn out process to be able to actually get that going. And I just kind of sat back the one day and I was like, there's got to be a better way for this to be done in this day and age. And it was around the time, I think, where AI was all really starting to kick off and things were going a little bit crazy in that sort of tech industry. And I was like, well, if people can be making talking robots that are like almost human-like at this point, well, why have we still got this really manual, email, pen and paper kind of world between athletes and brands? And so that's where it all kind of started. And then I went and spoke to a load of other athletes, starting with some of my kind of close network, just asking them, their experiences and seeing, what their journeys have been like in that world. And found that it was very, very similar. Everybody had experienced the same kind of struggles, really. So then expanded that out, spoke to a lot of athletes in other sports and various different levels, again, to see, is this something that happens everywhere, or is it just in my close network? And again, found all athletes everywhere at every level seem to have the same struggle. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. And then obviously had to think, right, well, all of the athletes are struggling with this. Doesn't mean anything if the brands aren't. So I went and spoke to a number of decision makers at brands that I'd worked with in the past and had good relationships with. And again, just asked the question of what's your process like for working with athletes? How does that look? How do you go about doing it? How many members of the team do you allocate to that? And again, found that it's a really tough process for them. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of man hours. It's not simple. It's not easy to track. It's not easy to manage or scale up. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. Now we've got two lots of people that want to work with each other but can't find a way to do it simply or easily. And so that was where it was all kind of born around then. And first port of call for me was, right, well, what could this look like based on all these issues that everybody's told me they've got and these shared common problems? What could a solution be? And started to kind of put that together and get feedback on that from all of those people and understand, what do you think of this? And no, actually that doesn't work. Well, what about this then? And kind of started to shape what this almost solution could look like. Came to a point where everybody seemed to be pretty on board that this looked really good. This seemed like a really good idea and really good solution. And from there I was like, right, well, I think we've got ourselves a business here. But I'm not really a business person yet. I'm still very new to this world. I've always been fascinated by business and always kind of dabbled in bits and pieces here and there throughout my life, really. But I've never tried to take on a challenge like this before. And obviously, being the way I am, I was like, but that's not going to stop me. I'm going to do it anyway. So, I think. Sorry, stop me if I'm rambling here.
Out of interest, Matt, who was say the first port of call that you went for advice then? So, like saying that. Good point to stop you there when you were saying, like, I don't know anything about business. What shall I do? Who did you turn to speak to? Was there a person or a couple of people that immediately kind of sprung to mind that you respected and wanted to chat to?
Yeah, absolutely. That was exactly it. The first kind of step for me was, well, I know I've got something here, and it's almost been validated by those conversations that there's something to this idea. But in terms of delivering on that now and how do we actually turn this idea into a real business was an area that I was like, right, this isn't my expertise yet. So the first person I spoke to was actually a guy called Jim Rumley, who's a fantastic guy. So he's somebody I'd worked with previously on another project that I'd invested into. And he'd worked closely with that project and I'd got to know him really well. And so it was somebody I really respected. I knew his background was exceptional. And so I just gave him a call and I was like, right, Jim, this is this thought I've got. This is all the bits and pieces that I've done so far. What do you think? And he was like, look, mate, this seems like a really interesting idea. He was like, I can see where you're going with it. The fact that everybody seems to be on the same page about the issues and the problems is really encouraging. And he was like, right, well, these are the bits you need to get started to turn this into something, and really worked with me then to kind of build out that plan, that roadmap, the goal, and what we were looking to do and what we needed to do between now and then to get there. So then from that point, one of the early conversations, well, look, Jim's fantastic. He's great with the numbers. He knows all the business stuff, but he's not a techie guy. I'm not a techie guy either, and we're looking to build a tech company here. So what do we do there? So the next conversation then was with a guy called Matt Cox, who's another fantastic guy. So he's the father of another swimmer that I'm good friends with. And he used to be, or very recently, he sold his half of a software development company that he co-founded about 20 years ago. And I was like, right, Matt's a great person to speak to. So talked to him about what we were doing. And he was exactly the same, really bought into it, really liked it. Obviously, probably having a child in that world would have helped. He knew the issues we were looking to solve. And so those two guys were the first two people that I kind of formally brought on board and took on this journey with me, because I wanted to really fill the gaps in the obvious big gaps in my knowledge and experience with people that had been there and done it and could tell me when I'm being stupid. So those are the first two.
And it's perfect. Like I worked for Richard Branson for like 17 years with Atlantic, and then 5 years with Virgin Startup, and you could see it more so when I was at Virgin Startup, because when I was at Virgin Atlantic, I was too busy partying and not realizing is like a 40-year-old guy who owns an airline and a record company back in the day. I wish I'd paid more attention. But Virgin Startup, you'd see him starting up all these new businesses. An example I always think of is like Virgin Sport, and he's like, you might automatically think you've got billions and billions of pounds. We're going to start a new business. Let's chuck a load of money at it, get the best people, massive team. But no, every business that he started, he would literally pick someone who was elite in their field. So Virgin Sport, it was the head of the New York Marathon, which before, I think, London last year, 2025, was the biggest participation sport in the world. So he got her, put her behind a desk and gave her like 3 support staff, and that's it. But incentivized her by giving her, shares in the business. So she's incentivized to work it. And because I was at Virgin Startup at the time, I'm like, wow, I didn't remotely think that. I was thinking he'd go in, chuck, tens of millions of pounds at it, staff of 30 or whatever it might be. I'd never in a million years think he'd literally go, here's 3 people. Here's you, who's got experience creating this massive, participation sport business. Go and create something like that for Virgin. But it starts small, right? With all these things. Something that popped into my head, Matt, was in these conversations with these people that you knew, like, respected, and trusted. Did at any point somebody say, "You're an elite athlete. You're aiming for these competitions. How are we going to ensure that you don't become totally and utterly overwhelmed and that career goes, by the?" Because we're talking, as you alluded to before, the margins in your sport are tiny, right? So how do you kind of put that, or you, as part of the roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was not a concern per se, but it was something that we talked about quite a lot early on, to kind of figure out what could that look like, and what would it look like, not just now, but also if things go really, really well, what does that look like? Because that's an area that we wanted to make sure. Obviously the goal is for them to go really, really well, but we didn't want that to happen and then us to be going, well, what do we do now? It was a conversation we had and talked a lot about early on. And the kind of general consensus was, look, firstly, I'm riddled with ADHD. I'm absolutely full of it. I can't sit still. My mind is never off. And so we were like, that's already a little bit of a superpower for me there. And then the conversation from there was like, right, well, what does this actually look like on a day-to-day basis? What are the deliverables, if you like, of the two worlds actually look like? And I think we realized pretty quick that as much as swimming is a very demanding sport, there's a lot of training that goes into it. There's also a lot of hours in between training that you kind of sat at home twiddling your thumbs. And that's an area where we were like, well, there's some real opportunity there to do something constructive with that time, and use that to really dedicate myself to what I'm doing here. But to be completely honest, there was somewhat of we had to take a punt and see what happened and see where it went. And so that's kind of what we did, really. And early on, obviously, there wasn't that much for me to be doing in the business. As of right now, where we're on just under 2 weeks from launch, as on the day of filming, there's a lot going on. There's tons to be doing. There's always stuff to get done. But I think for me personally, the way that I work, being able to leave the pool and almost really sink my teeth into something outside of the water and really get stuck in there and engage my mind constantly and always, problem solving and almost being able to bounce around different areas of the business all the time, because that's what it requires. It stimulates my mind in a way that I really enjoy and that I love. And I think it's given me, almost outside of the pool, the sort of focus to make sure that when I'm at the pool, I'm completely locked in on the water, and I'm not distracted or thinking about other things. And it gives me a nice space as well, actually, to step away from the business world and what's going on there, and being able to step back and just do something else for a little bit. And then likewise, when I get home, same thing. I get to stick to something else and think about that, and not end up overthinking about the pool and about performance and training and all of that. And so we've actually found that it's been a really nice distraction from each other and a nice balance.
Yeah, because again, I've spoken to a number of professional athletes over the years, from everything from rugby to football and kind of everything in between, and sprinting and BMX and skiing, you name it. And the amount of people you speak to who, similar to what you say, got that much spare time on their hands and they're not using it constructively. There are, there might be constructive to some people, but gaming or playing million different hours of table tennis or something like that. But if you can actually engage your mind with problem solving, as you're doing as well, and you're learning, you're educating yourself. Thought popped into my head then as well. I always remember interviewing Julian Hearn from Huel, and at the time when I did the first interview with him, they'd gone from a £750,000 turnover in year one to, I think, 50 million, I should say, in year five. But I remember him saying he set that business up to be a lifestyle business, or he didn't want to employ anybody. And he said, by the end of year one, with £750,000 in sales, I realized this ain't no lifestyle business. So I've got to start plugging people into where I don't have the knowledge, who can grow and scale the company. Because again, he was like, I'm clearly onto something here. How do I, grab this with both hands? But one argument is you could have kept it, you could have downscaled it, but any entrepreneur is not going to want to do that, right? You're going to want to ride the coattails of that thing. So, how did you how much of this is like my virgin startup brain coming back in. How much of proof of concept did you have then? Like, how many people did you think? How many athletes did you want to talk to? How many brands did you want to talk to? Because I've seen kind of both sides, where somebody would come in and go, I've spoken to 3 people, and someone else going, I've spoken to 3,000 people. And you're like, okay, slow down. When are you going to action the idea? There's only so many people you can speak to, right? What was your kind of proof of concept numbers wise with that, Matt?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be honest, I don't think I've got the exact numbers off the top of my head. It's been obviously such a journey since then. I can't remember the exact details, but I think it was well over 20 different athletes from, I think, 8 different sports, and tried to really get a range of the top, the real elites of those sports, and then some people that were more sort of early in that journey, whether that be junior athletes or athletes that are competing at the very highest of levels but haven't necessarily had the major success yet to really break through, and tried to get a real breadth of that and understand from everybody's perspective what does it look like. And likewise from the brands, I think I spoke to 5 decision makers at 5 different brands that I'd worked with, to understand their processes, and they were different industries and sectors, if you like, again, to just get a grip of what does that actually look like, and I think you've almost kind of alluded to it quite well there, and I suppose you buy into it given the name of the show. I'm very much somebody that I don't like to just kind of stew on things and think. I would much rather get started, make some mistakes along the way, and maybe even have to completely pivot if I really have to, rather than spend forever with that kind of analysis paralysis of overthinking and over analyzing, because I believe that you learn far more from doing than you do from thinking.
It exactly, hence the name of the show. Screw it, just do it. It was literally trying to get those people who are sitting on the fence, procrastinating, or just not taking action to actually do the thing.
So I wanted to let you know about something that I see trip founders up all the time. If you're running a business with international payments, one of the biggest hidden costs is often foreign exchange. World First is built specifically for businesses operating across borders, helping you manage payments, hold multiple currencies, and reduce unnecessary FX costs. They're not a high street bank trying to do everything. They focus purely on international business payments and currency exchange. that's their thing. Switching providers is a commitment, which is why they're giving our listeners 50 fee-free business transactions to properly test their service. Plus, signing up for an account is completely free, and there are no ongoing monthly fees. You've got 60 days from sign up to use them. Head to worldfirst.com/screwit and get your 50 fee-free business transactions. Now back to the podcast.
For me, it's always like, you can come up with your roadmap and you can like reverse engineer the process, but then it's like, it's like one of my favorite books called The One Thing. And it's like, what is that one big domino that if you do that task, and it could be a phone call, it could be, I don't know, social media post, a conversation. But if you knock that big domino over, it knocks all the other dominoes, makes everything else easier in the entire process. Right. And tell me, for launch, there's never a perfect number, right? But in your mind, what were you kind of building up to? Like, how many athletes, how many brands, what kind of ratio? And I guess, you're shooting in the dark, right? You don't know what you don't know. But what are you kind of thinking in your mind is kind of good numbers and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with what we were kind of hoping for, sort of a while back when we really got started with the process of building the platform, and kind of setting a date for when we'd like to launch. So at that point in time, the goal for us was to launch the platform with 500 athletes on a wait list, and 5 brands to go with that, and those 5 brands to list an opportunity when we launched. So we're also well aware that as much as we are essentially building a two-sided marketplace, if you like, there are far more athletes out there that are looking to earn money and looking to get sponsorships than there are brands who have the budget to do that. And so we're not going to shy away from that and sort of try and pretend that everybody that joins Sponsor is going to get a massive sponsorship deal, because it's just not possible. So we are very aware of that and conscious of it. That said, the goal is to try and make sure that we bring as many brands and as many opportunities for athletes onto the platform as possible, to be able to work with those athletes. So as of right now, we've just today ticked over 5,000 athletes on our waitlist. Now that's come from over 50 different sports. So we've got 50 sports on our waitlist drop down, if you like, and then we've got other, and we've got about 500 of those athletes who are in the other category. So I'm not sure how many more sports we can think of, but we're gonna send out some targeted outreach to them to figure out what those sports are and add them to the list. But so that's the kind of athlete side at the moment. And then as of today, I think we've got 20 different brands ready to launch with. And then we've got multiple of those brands planning to launch with multiple opportunities. So obviously, that's a lot more athletes than it is brands at the moment. But that said, when we do launch the platform, not all of the athletes will be going straight onto the platform. So there's a sort of verification process from when you join to be able to actually begin applying to those opportunities. And that process isn't to say, it's not for us to say that you are or aren't eligible or fit for these campaigns. It's just for us to be able to say, look, you are doing what you need to do as an athlete to present yourselves in the best way possible, for the brands. Whether that means that you've got 100 followers or 100 million followers, doesn't matter. But as long as you're somebody that is kind of positioning yourself online as somebody that could be a really good option for those brands to work with in any domain and any kind, those are the kind of people we want on the platform and to be put in front of the brands that we work with. So that's the kind of numbers at the moment, and we've got now a team in-house that are full-time bringing those numbers up, and we've got a lot of meetings over the next 2 weeks into launch with a lot of other brands. So hopeful that number will be quite a lot more by the time we launch as well.
I bet, and I think it's probably just kind of double down on what you said, really. Just and we're all still learning. I've had some amazing sponsors, brand partners on this show. Right from starting out with like local businesses through to I mentioned to you before, like the Virgin Atlantics and Barclays Banks, and just signing an amazing deal with World First at the moment. And what was interesting that came out of the conversation with those guys, and I think this is relevant for people who are listening who are athletes, aspiring athletes, marketing managers, directors of marketing, directors of sponsorship, etc., is that not everybody wants to sponsor Harry Kane, England captain, right? When I had the conversation about sponsoring this podcast, they were like, we did our research. We approached Stephen Bartlett's team at Dara, the CEO. They quoted £1 million a month. Unbelievable, right? But fair play to him. if you can ask for that. I don't know if that's what he'd settle for, right? It could be very different, but that's what he's quoting.
Well, they always say start high, don't they? But
yeah, exactly that. But they said, the realization was we don't actually want to sponsor Diary CEO because they appeal to everybody all of the time. We actually want to sponsor a podcast that speaks to founders of podcasts because that is our target market. And it's going to be the same for you, right? Somebody wants to sponsor an athlete in a specific sport maybe, or that gives them a specific demographic that is attracted to watching that sport. Like a skier might have a completely different audience to a BMX athlete, right? And everywhere in between.
Absolutely. And also, that range from, some athletes on the platform that we've got ready to launch with us are, Premier League footballers, England women's first team footballers, rugby players, multi-Olympic champions. And then we've also got people on there who are a lot earlier in that journey, who are, don't have that many followers on social media, but they're doing really well in their sport. Likewise, we've got some people in there that are sort of probably closer to the more amateur level of their sport, but with huge communities on social media of really engaged and targeted, followers. So there's a real mix of athletes that we've got ready to join the platform. And one of the fascinating things from speaking with the brands that we've been bringing on board is exactly that. There are some brands that are like, look, we want to sponsor the biggest hitters that you've got. We want to find them and we want to work with them. We've also got a load of brands, including the real big sort of tier one, global name brands that we've got on board, who are very much of the attitude that actually, no, we're not looking for that right now. We've already got some of those. What would be great is if we can get access to some athletes in this particular sport, in this kind of demographic, who would really be able to help us with this outcome for a campaign we're running. And that's been fascinating to us because we're like, well, actually, we've got loads of athletes here and we've got such a diverse range of athletes that pretty much any request that we've had so far from a brand of actually, this is something that could be really useful. We're like, well, actually, funny you say that because we've got this whole demographic, all of this pool of athletes that could really work with you on that. So exactly that. And that's the exciting thing for me, I think, as the founder of this, that it's not going to be a platform that all flows to the top 1% per se, as the current system almost does. It's going to be able to open doors to athletes that would never have gotten access to those kind of things before, but the brands do want to work with. And that's one of the things that's really exciting for me, I think, so far.
And I also think, and it might have occurred to you as well, but during the life cycle of your business, as you grow and you scale, you can see other doors opening, right? I mean, I said at the beginning about, a similar model. I mean, I'm already thinking now, like if once you nail this, you could literally go, okay, we'll do this for podcasters, right? And you can then go, actually, are we a talent business? Are we a data business? Because we're building this huge database of people. It's fascinating, right? And you just don't know, right, where it's going to go. And I always think back to conversation with the founders of Lush, and they were like, we thought our target demographic was kids. We're making bath bombs, but we've got someone from 8 to 88 coming in and buying that because they're buying it for their grandkids. So you just don't know where it can take you, right? It must be incredibly exciting for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly it. Is there's so many sort of routes and roads and ways that we can go with this. At the moment, I think one of the big things for me so far, and one of the biggest learning points I think so far of the process of building the platform to where it is right now is the concept of an MVP. Obviously, everybody knows what that is. I'm well aware of what it is and the reasoning behind it and the concept of it. That said, when you're in the moment, and you're in the position where you're building your platform, you're building your business, you want it to have all the bells and whistles and all the features you can possibly think of. And actually, it's been really important for me to learn and through this process to go, well, actually, no, let's start with the fundamentals. Get that right. Get athletes, get brands, build a platform and connect the two of them. And then from there, use the feedback from all of those people to go, right, well, where do you want us to go with this next? Do you want this feature, or are we way off, or, because we're already finding there's things that the brands we're bringing on board are like, oh, actually, this would be really useful. And we're like, fantastic, that's great. We can do that. That's not a problem. And it's stuff that some of it we've already thought of, but, wasn't a priority for us. Some of it we've not even thought of. And it's like, well, this is great. And I think that whole process of almost the unknown to the business and where it could go and where it likely will go, will probably be very different to what I'd imagined, just under a year ago when I first came up with the idea. And I think that unknown is what makes it so exciting.
Does, and then but you're also right that you got to focus on the original idea, and you're being guided by the feedback right from both the brands and the athletes. And yes, it can be more challenging in many ways compared to other businesses, because you're trying to work both sides of the coin, right? You're trying to polish up both of them, but then equally you and I, from hundreds and hundreds of interviews on this podcast, you'll have to learn, and you probably have already, to kind of block out the noise. You get idiots like me going, do this for podcasters, this is amazing, you can easily switch this, just get another developer working on it. But you're like, no, this is the core business. We're going to nail this first, and then we can go and look at other, opportunities that exist out there. Or you might pivot, like our mutual friend Matt Williams, with Hydro and those guys, with Raj and that, came up with one idea and they pivoted the business completely, and who the target market of the business was. And I'm sure there's countless examples of that, right?
Yeah, no, 100%, and that's exactly it. I think being open to that, and being open-minded enough to listen to all of the feedback, but also then being able to kind of take a step back and be able to figure out what from that feedback is a signal and what's just noise, exactly as you said, and be able to kind of differentiate that is there's no right or wrong. There's no sort of handbook you get when you start a business to tell you this is how to go about it. And I think, you have to figure it out as you're going along. So that's exactly it. And understanding which bits and pieces we do want to do and when. The goal for us is to turn this into the operating system for athletes and brands all around the world to connect with each other and to work with each other. And we're only going to be able to do that if we're able to take on that feedback, figure out which bits are important and which bits to do right now, and then action it and deliver on it. And I think that's the stage we're at right now in starting to bring athletes and brands on board ahead of launch. Starting to get that feedback, and I would imagine that feedback is only going to become more so, and it's going to be coming thick and fast when we do launch. And so the process is going to be a little bit more difficult, but it's going to be really important.
Did you, when you're having these conversations, were people saying to you, doesn't this already exist, or why hasn't anyone thought of this before? Because that's when you kind of know you're onto something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a few people, quite a lot of people actually, that have said this feels like it's too good to be true. Like, why has nobody done it? And so to be completely honest, there are a couple of other brands out there that are similar concepts, similar idea to try and connect athletes and brands, but have maybe gone about it a slightly different way to the way that we have. So I'm not going to give those brands a platform because obviously they're now competition for us. But there are a couple of others out there that have done it, but it's a small market at the moment. There's not many people that have really tried it, and of the people that have tried it, nobody's really tried it the way we're doing it right now. So I suppose in answer to the question of why has nobody done it before, it might be a little bit because nobody's thought of it, or it might be a little bit because people have tried it but done it a different way. But I think the goal for us is to take what could be a really exciting and a really fantastic idea and then turn it into a really exciting and a really fantastic solution.
Yeah, I remember interviewing somebody years ago who created a platform, a female athlete, created a platform and onboarded a load of athletes from different sports. But what they were doing were selling like coaching services, like to the audience, etc. So it was a lot, lower numbers, I would say, in the remuneration that an athlete could receive from it. And I don't know whether that succeeded or it didn't, for example. So last few questions for you, Matt. What lessons from your sport have you found are like easily transferable into the business world? And I know you're only say like a year into this journey, but there must have been maybe a couple of things that you think this helps. Is it like the discipline, for example, from training being uber focused? And you mentioned your ADHD there as well. So
yeah, no, I think this is probably one of the things that I've found is most interesting is the parallels between sport and business. There are just so many, and I think there's so many lessons that I've learned from sport that have been applicable and really useful and valuable in what I've been doing in business now. To kind of pinpoint a few, I think from a very young age, my dad always said to me about sport and to be fair, just about anything in life, but generally about sport when I was growing up. These three laws, almost three rules. First one being enjoy it. So whatever it is you're doing, make sure you're enjoying it. Because if you're not enjoying it, life's too short. Don't bother. Do something else, and go and find something you do enjoy. So first things first, do you enjoy it? If yes, carry on. And so from the business perspective, I love it. I've absolutely found a real joy and a real love for what I'm doing in business, which is amazing. And so I've got that bit's ticked. Secondly, work hard. And it sounds really simple, but nothing comes easy. Nothing's going to come easy in sport. You know, in that application, you've got to work hard and work harder than everybody else around you. And so the same thing in business. You know, most evenings at the moment, I'll be up till midnight working on something. Then I'll be getting up in the morning, going training, coming back, working all through the day, training again in the afternoon, coming back, working all through to the evening, and just rinse and repeat. You know, and I think there's going to be a point in time where I can start to delegate a little bit more, and there's less work needed for me to do up to midnight. But as of right now, that's what the business needs, and that's what the sport needs. And so I'm putting in the work to make sure it gets done. And I think the final one being listen to your coaches. So obviously, in a sporting aspect, listen to your coaches. They're there to help. They've been there. They've done it. They know better than you do. So listen to them. And I think the same principle applies in business. And that's where, you know, like I said, one of the first things I did was figure out, well, who are my coaches in this business? Who are the people that I need to lean on that have the expertise that I don't have? And people that I can trust and people that I want to listen to. Found those guys and I listen to them. You know, I don't always go, you know, the exact same way that they say to go. There's times where we'll go through things and they'll be like, let's do this way. And I'll be like, yeah, but how about that way? And we'll talk it through and we'll go, actually, yeah, let's give that way a try. But the majority of the time, when I ask them a question and they give me an answer, I'll listen. And I think that's really important because I am still learning. I am still very new to this. You know, I've become quite experienced in the sports world and in my sport of swimming. But I'm a baby in the world of business. You know, I'm very much at the beginning of that journey. And so that's the three kind of main things I'd say that I've really kind of taken from sport and put into business. And I suppose the final one personally for me, just being to believe in yourself. And that's what I try to do with this and instill that belief into the team around us. And you know, so far, I think we're all very much on the same page that we've got a huge opportunity here.
I love it. I love those three pieces of advice. Very, very cool as well from your dad, was it? You said, yeah, really cool. What will success look like for you with the business?
Good question. Again, coming back to being very ambitious, I think to me success will be when I can sit back in however many years' time and go, right, we have now changed the way that athletes and brands interact with each other all around the world for the better. You know, and we've improved the lives of however many athletes by making them more accessible to sponsorship, to opportunities, to earnings. Also to athletes just being able to see what's out there, see how they can better position themselves to get those opportunities, and also potentially opened up more of the market so that it's not just those top athletes that are able to earn from their sports, but actually the ones that aren't maybe the highest of performers now are able to get access to those campaigns. And like I say, that we're seeing more and more interest in from brands. So I think being able to sit back and say, right, we've done that. We've changed that market. We've improved the lives of athletes for the better. We've made the lives of decision makers in the marketing teams at brands easier. And we've done that all around the world on a huge scale. That will be success for me.
I love that. That's really well encapsulated. And what about going back to your sport? What would success look like for the next 2 to 6 years for you?
Yeah, it's another good question. I think obviously the 2028 LA Olympic Games is the next sort of real big one on the horizon, if you like. So that's the major target right now. Obviously, is gearing up towards that. And I think my first Olympics, I won 1 Olympic gold. The second Olympics, I won a gold and a silver. Third Olympics, I don't want to do gold, silver, bronze. I would much rather go. I would much rather go 2 golds. But you know, look, I think moving into that next Olympics, the success for me in LA would be to continue improving, to continue getting faster, and you know, it would be fantastic if we can defend that 4x2 relay gold for a 3rd time in a row. It had never been done twice in a row, let alone 3. So that would be incredible, and then also to be able to potentially upgrade that individual silver to a gold, and you know, if we could throw another medal in there as well for good luck, that would be great. But yeah, I think the best answer though is to keep enjoying it, keep loving what I'm doing.
Yeah, and by LA in 2028, you could be the most well-connected athlete at those Olympic Games, to be honest with you, at this rate.
Quite possibly, quite possibly. That's something I joked about this the other day. I said this is a really expensive and a really complicated way of expanding my network. But it's succeeding. But there's definitely simpler ways of doing it. But yeah,
There are. Having a podcast is one of them. That's how I've had grown my network, by accident, basically, by hosting live events and then turning the live events into a podcast. And it's an amazing way to connect with really interesting people like yourself, really, interesting, ambitious people. Quick fire round to finish. There's no right or wrong answer. First thing that comes into your head, just a couple of questions for you, Matt. For you, what constitutes an entrepreneur? Like, what's your definition of an entrepreneur?
I think an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to take an idea and find a way to monetize it, whether that be through social media, which is becoming a far more common domain to do that, through sport, to a certain extent, being able to take your personal brand and monetize it in a way that can earn you money, or whether that be an idea in the business world and taking that, turning it into a business and making money out of it. I think if you've got a purpose and you've got a goal and you're able to find a way to monetize it, then I would call you an entrepreneur.
I love that. What is your definition of a scale-up business then? Something obviously that you're going to aspire to become in as quick a time as possible, maybe.
I think that starts with the almost the culture of the people in the business, and the attitude and the direction that they want to take it in. And I think it comes back to that belief. I think if a business has the belief that they want to get from where they are right now and grow it to become where they'd like to be in the future, and they're on that journey of taking it from A to B, I'd say again that constitutes you as a scale up.
Something we talked offline, but we didn't talk online. But you talked about funding your business, raising finance. What do we need to do? And maybe you can kind of speak a little bit on your experience in that. What do we need to do more of in the UK to create more scale up businesses, to create more startups as well, to create more entrepreneurs?
Generally speaking, I think in Britain we're quite good at being miserable. To be completely honest, we're good at complaining. Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm just as bad for it as the next person. We're good at complaining about the weather and about how rubbish the football team did at the weekend and all that sort of stuff. And I think from a business perspective, sometimes in the UK, we maybe don't have the same attitude that often the Americans may have. And I don't want to big up the Yanks too much, But look, I think that something they're very good at is believing, dreaming big, and also believing for other people, and dreaming big for other people and not just for themselves. And I think, for us, we were very fortunate. We got some amazing people that have backed what we're doing with Sponsor and have come on board and invested, and we've also got a lot of people that want to, that we haven't yet had the opportunity to bring on board, but we plan to in the near future. And so we've been very fortunate that we've been able to raise that funding with some incredible people who do believe and do have that same drive and ambition and belief in what we're doing. But I've spoken to a lot of other founders in various other industries and with various other goals, who have found that really difficult and finding those people that are like-minded and believe in their visions really challenging. So I think the simple answer is to not just believe in other people. And I'm not saying that the simple answer is to invest more in other companies, but I think the simple answer is to help other people, and help them on their journey in any which way that's doable, even if that's just facilitating a hello between you and somebody else. I think that would go a long way in helping businesses prosper in the UK.
You briefly mentioned our American friends. Why do you think, other than like the size and the sheer number, what do you think they do, potentially better than we do by producing more scale up and unicorn businesses?
I think it starts with just culture. I think there's always this talk around the American dream, and living the American dream, and there's almost that go-getter attitude, I think, with a lot of Americans where, they like to see each other going after something and going after a big goal and something that maybe should be unachievable. But they like to see that in each other and cheer each other on. And I think, again, you see it in sport a lot. The crowds in the US are enormous at a college competition for, a college football. you'll see crowds that are larger than a Premier League football game, and it's every single time they compete. I think they're very good at getting behind each other and getting behind the country. And I think, I don't want to say they're better at that than we are, but I think that there's definitely elements of that we in the UK can try and learn from and try and be better at, in terms of cheering each other on and believing in each other.
Agree with you. Which founder or entrepreneur do you admire the most, like right now? Somebody that you could roll off the tongue.
Oh, that's such a tough question.
There's so many, I know.
Yeah, but there's a lot. There really is a lot.
I get Richard Branson probably every other interview, and he's like my number one because he's my ex-boss as well, but because of what he's achieved, right? But yeah, or maybe someone people don't know about that you've come across in your journey. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is a really tough question. There's a lot of people is the cheap answer, but I won't give you just the cheap answer. I think probably some of the people that I would aspire to the most are those entrepreneurs that have taken something that just doesn't look possible. It doesn't look like a real thing that should be doable, and turned it into something enormous. And you look at what that generally has been, and I think generally speaking, the companies that turn into those unicorns, those enormous, massive, multi-billion pound companies and more, are the ones where somebody has spotted something and a trend in the market that's going a certain way, and then they've built something at the very beginning of that trend. And I think you've seen that with the internet boom with companies like Amazon, where the internet started to really pick up, and that happened. Then you see it with smartphones, where smartphones became a big thing, and then Uber all of a sudden very soon after became a thing before GPS was there, and they slowly started to build into it, and then they are what they are now. But I think the best answer for you, probably given what we're doing, is the entrepreneurs that have built companies like Uber, like Airbnb, where they've found two people that are looking for each other and can't find each other, and built a solution to connect them. Those are the founders that I think that I'd aspire to be like at the minute.
Yeah, no, connection is the most powerful thing, isn't it? Anyone you could recommend, and you can come back to me at a later date with this, but I always ask this one. Anyone who you, having been on the show, that you think would be a great guest from your network, feel free to think of somebody and come back to me on that one.
Yeah, I think maybe somebody like Adam Peaty, where he's built a pretty cool business with his AP race and what they're doing globally now. That could be a cool one for you. Even people like Sam Warburson, who's taken his rugby career and turned that into an academy that he now runs, and that's something maybe could be another one for you. So yeah, maybe some of those guys could be interesting ones.
Yeah, nice. And I just thought of a question to finish up on, if you don't mind, and it kind of alludes to a big part of your business, I think, moving forward as well. Is that what advice would you have for a young athlete when it comes to wanting to grow a personal brand? You've grown a personal brand yourself, right? If they're starting, I was literally, this comes from being at my running club last Saturday, and I just saw a lad stood on his own. I always try and make an effort to chat to somebody, who's on their own, doesn't seem to know anyone else. And I went to chat to him, and he was only 19, and he's a boxer, and he's looking to go professional. And I think he said he had it was something like 80 or 180 followers on his social media, and he was starting out right at the beginning. And I just thought, we've all been there, and it's trying to get the first 100, then it's trying to get the first 1,000, then 10,000, etc. But I just thought it comes in rather well. Speaking to you today, what advice would you give to someone, especially knowing now what you've known from the last, say, 6-12 months as well, and your experience in growing your own following? What advice would you give to someone like that? Harvey, his name was, that young boxer?
Yeah, I think first piece of advice I'd give on that is to show up. Show up every day in, day out, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think a big belief that I have is that you'll never be put down by people who have done it. You'll only ever be put down by people that haven't. And I think there's a lot of people in today's world that are afraid to put themselves out there on social media because they're scared of what people around them might think or might say, or they might get teased or whatever. And I think the best piece of advice I can give you is ignore that. Put yourself out there, get your face out there, get yourself on camera, whether that be photos, videos, whatever kind of content you want to do. You can't grow until you start putting stuff out there. So that's the first piece of advice. And then I think the next piece is to be consistent, not get wrapped up in the fact that, we talked about this earlier, maybe one piece of content has blown up and gone incredibly well and done really, exceptional things, huge numbers. And then the next piece you put out that you've tried to follow the same framework and it feels like it's going to do just as well, and it just completely flops and it gets no views, barely anything, barely any engagement. Don't get disheartened by that. It's a very complex algorithm that goes behind the social media, companies and the way that they push those out to people. That's why they're so good. Is because they're so complex. So it's not easy to figure out exactly how to do that. So don't be disheartened by it. Keep showing up, keep putting things out, keep trying new things, learn from what's worked, learn from what hasn't, and keep trying to refine it and figure out your niche and your roadmap and the content that works for you. I think best piece of advice is just get out there and start posting.
Agreed. Well, look, sorry to have overrun. Apologies, but really enjoyed chatting to you. Really excited to see how you go on your journey. It sounds like you've got a lot of the important pieces of the puzzle in place, and you're getting great advice from people. Continued success, and keep us posted on the journey, Matt. Thank you very much indeed.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
If this conversation resonated with you, don't just sit there, act on it. Make sure you follow or subscribe for more game-changing conversations, and remember, the only thing standing between you and your business breakthrough is the decision to screw it and just do it.